Hey, J-Lo.
Yes'm.
Have you ever wanted to be in, say, a rap duo?
Yes.
Really?
I'd be great at that.
Just like always one of your dreams, which is really quite coincidental because it's always been part of my dream as well. So let's just try it. Let's see what happens here. Let's make music.
I don't know where you're going. Okay, let's see.
I said it's getting cold in here,
So cold.
so keep on all your clothes.
I am getting so cold. I'm gonna keep my jumper on.
Yes, round of applause to us. Yes,
We didn't rehearse that.
We actually
crazily
did
enough.
not rehearse. I mean, I don't know if they'll believe us, J-Lo, but yeah, that was not rehearsed whatsoever, and those were lyrics made up on the fly. So I think rap battles are in our future, but what that beautiful rendition of our take on a Nelly classic is about Flash Drivers is just welcoming you to the show because we hope that you're joining us from maybe a well-heated car or a train carriage, from under a doona maybe, or just somewhere where the gloves and scarves are readily available and accessible because, J-Lo, it's a tad cold.
A little bit chilly. I'm hoping you've got like a warm Milo. That's what I'm wishing for our listeners.
Oh, I do. I don't have a... Oh, I thought you meant me. I was like, oh, that would be so on brand if I had a warm Milo. I've just got a coffee, but that warm Milo would be way better. I don't know.
I've been bringing them out over the past couple of nights.
It's just, how do you go in the cold? Because I mean, I know it's like this cliche, right, where Australia drops to single digits and no one can handle it and everyone makes fun of us online. However, it's accurate because it's
It's un-Australian. It's un-Australian, this weather. And for it to be this prolonged, like we can cop a cold day here and there, but it's just been, in Sydney at least, it's just been like 2 weeks of it. Enough already.
Yeah, enough. I've been in Melbourne for a few days and it has been absolutely Antarctic to the point where I thought that I may lose limbs to frostbite. Am I being slightly dramatic? Don't know, but it's my story and I'm going to say it. So...
Well, even Brisbane people who they hate wearing long pants, they're getting cold at the moment. So
That's
pray
true.
for the Brisbaneites.
Pray for the short wearers among you all. But look, it is very, very cold. And you know what else is probably not helping with the warm, fuzzy feelings?
Australians have been warned there is no silver bullet and no magic answers to the country's energy crisis.
When it comes to the energy markets, there's a range of things going on at once, unfortunately, a perfect storm of conditions.
I think Australians understand that you don't undo 9 years of policy chaos in one meeting.
Aussie families spending more than $85 a week extra compared with a year ago.
There's no use mincing words about it, Lisa. It is going to be difficult. We've got high and rising inflation, rising interest rates, falling real wages.
Ah, yes. Hardly a warming forecast for life right now. J-Lo, we're going to be...
I know, right?
Oh, God. I promise that we will be bringing some heartening chat and analysis throughout this podcast, this particular episode. But before we get to that, I'm Georgie Tunny.
And I'm James Law.
And this is Flash Drive. J-Law, what a week. As we've just heard, a pretty pessimistic week, to be honest. I mean, rising interest rates, surging inflation, a national lettuce shortage. I mean, it's not been amazing.
It's not been great. Yeah, so it started on Tuesday with the Reserve Bank deciding to put up the official cash rate by 0.5 of a percentage point, which is the biggest monthly jump in 22 years. So it kind of shows that the Reserve Bank is kind of hitting the panic button on this inflationary pressure we've had. And then that was kind of coupled with Jim Chalmers, the new treasurer, coming out and really giving a pretty grim prediction about the year ahead for the economy. He said, we already know inflation is bad, but he says it's worse than the predictions and it's not going away anytime soon. And with the interest rate rises, the banks are already saying they reckon there'll be another 0.5 increase next month and then increases every month until Christmas. Strap in, Australia. It's going to suck.
It's going to absolutely suck. And J-Law, I know that there's been so much talk about, this has been inevitable. The Reserve Bank has had to eventually raise interest rates because they've been at record lows, right, throughout the whole pandemic and even before that. But is there an argument here that maybe the Reserve Bank is going too hard too soon? Because the amount of panic that I've kind of been hearing from, yes, the media, but also just everyday Australians that I chat to on my way to work, at work, it's everyone, this is all anyone's kind of talking about. And they're all worried that they won't be able to make those mortgage repayments. They won't be able to afford their energy bills. They've got zero chance of refinancing their mortgage if they would even get to that stage. So there's a lot of worry.
Well, the thing is, that's kind of part of the reason why they're doing it is to create a bit of, not worry, but a bit of caution in the way that people are spending their money, right? So inflation happens if the economy is overheated and there's too much money. So what they're actually trying to do is send a signal to the economy to like clamp down a little bit. So if people are worried, that's kind of a natural byproduct of what the Reserve Bank is trying to do. Are they acting too quickly? No.
Yeah.
I think the Reserve Bank has really cooked this. You know, the Reserve Bank governor gave the signal to the Australian economy and, you know, every mortgage holder for months on end that there wouldn't be an interest rate rise till at least 2023, maybe not 2024. And at the time when he was so adamant about this and just saying, relax, let's wait and see, everybody kind of knew that the economy was, like, inflation was out of control. Like the man on the street could see this, or like the people going to the supermarket could tell that something was out of whack. Yet the Reserve Bank just kept saying, no, we're going to softly, we're just going to wait and see, nothing to worry about. And now they're overcorrecting, and that's kind of the thing that's creating panic. It's like the change in their rhetoric so quickly, all of their forecasts being wrong, them underestimating these risks. So I think that if people are feeling worried, you know, I think that the Reserve Bank's got a lot to answer for. What do you think? Do you think that you're saying that there's a bit of panic out there that we shouldn't have?
I think so. I'm with you in that. I reckon that the Reserve Bank, even though I must admit, I don't think there's any good time, right, for them to raise interest rates. Like if they did it throughout the pandemic, Australians would have had an absolute meltdown, of course, because it has been, you know, unprecedented times. But I think like to go with these big jumps, like a jump of, what was the first one, 0.25 or 0.35? Right. 0.25%, and now a 0.5. And if we get another 0.5, you know, next month, that's like what, 1.25% rise in a matter in 2 months. And it just seems to me that of course is going to stir panic. And also you add into that a change in government. And I know the Reserve Bank and the government are separate entities. I get that. But it's one thing when this is all happening and then you're like, oh yeah, you've got familiar government in there, regardless of how you vote. But now there's like new people in there and they have to get up to speed with everything as well and build these new relationships. And I think that kind of adds to everything too. And also I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, J-Law, but throughout every press conference this week that I've seen from either the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, or the Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, for instance, there's been these little nods to, you know, they've now in government, they've now seen the books and the budget, and they're really seeing the position that Australia is in. And they have been far from optimistic about any of it, right? They've tried to be, as Jim Chalmers has said, not mincing words, and tried to be as realistic as possible and tell Australians that it's going to be shit.
Indeed. And like, you know, the quote from Jim Chalmers yesterday was, it'll get worse before it gets better. So where we are now, like, it feels like there's a lot of pressures. It's going to get worse. So you have to feel for the new Labor government to inherit these problems. Like, we knew they were coming, but things are worse than you know, we expected. So, you know, Jim Chalmers has got quite a task, because not only are people going to call out for him to do something about the cost of living, there's also the budget is hugely in deficit and there's not a lot of room there. You know, and the other thing is, like, a lot of these, you know, it keeps getting described as a perfect storm, right? So there is, massive overseas pressures that are influencing inflation, cost of living, fuel prices. All these things are all coming together, and then the need to increase interest rates. And there's only so many levers the government has to pull. I think, in the October budget that has been promised, we're probably going to see some childcare relief and things like that. But, there's not a lot else that the government can do at this point without making the problem worse.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because is there a danger that October budget, if they are trying to provide too many stimulatory measures, therefore it'll just only raise inflation again and completely overheat things even further? So that has to be really delicate come October.
Indeed, yeah. It's really tricky to get these things right, because especially if people just continue to cry out for more assistance, this is when they look to the government for help. But, as I say, it could make the problem worse. So
I think with just some stats that I've seen in the reports this week, it's been like if you have a $500,000 home loan, you may be paying $133 more each month, to which I'm already like, okay, that's quite a lot. However, I don't really know too many people who have only a $500,000 mortgage, right? Like usually it's, I don't know, at least recently, anyone trying to crack into the markets, especially if it's city markets, they'd have to have mortgages of, more than $1 million. So that is a huge financial strain that we're going to see added to Aussie households every single month with no end in sight. It's only going to keep increasing. Have you seen any kind of real life indications of the cost of living crisis or supply shortages that everyone in the media is talking about anyway? I know that a lot has been made about KFC not being able to have lettuce on their burgers because of a supply shortage more so than, maybe inflation as well. I mean, the lettuces, they're very expensive, so I guess that's why it's the inflation, supply and demand, right? But I've seen that in different settings now, that going to different restaurants, there's so many items off the menu because they just don't have any, they don't have the workers, and they can't pay the workers even if they had them, and so they're closing early. Like, I think there's a lot of... It's just a weird time. I think that's the best way I can put it. It's a weird time, and maybe it's just because I'm more so aware of it, because I think the last time that there was, the global financial crisis was 2008? When words like, when words like, recession and things like that were happening, were going around, and, I was still in school then, so I think I had definitely was a benefit of putting the head in the sand and not really knowing anything about finance. But now you and I are economic experts. So
Well, see, this is the thing, like there's a whole generation of new Australians who've never had to deal with an interest rate rise before. Talk to my parents or people of that generation, and they're like, this is what happens. You still have it's still a crazy low interest rate. But in terms of your question about the real world examples of this crisis that's going on, I kind of see it mostly in the supermarket. I think a lot of people would be the same. Like in the fresh fruit and veggie aisle, there's sort of just not a lot of produce, and what's there isn't very good quality, and what's there is super expensive. Like you'll get to the end of pay your bill and it was like, oh, I didn't realize I bought that much stuff. And it's like, no, it's just the prices are there. So, this is what I'm saying about, like, I feel like the average Aussie has been tuned into this for the best part of 6 months and have kind of been feeling these effects around petrol and food and the cost of just staple and necessary products going up in a way that the Reserve Bank hasn't. They just sort of haven't seemed to have their finger on the pulse in the same way. Like none of this is a super surprise to me, and I'm sure that a lot of listeners feel the same.
And now this is a really serious issue, and of course whenever there is serious news coming around, you will expect press packs to follow any kind of media opportunity whatsoever. They'll be there. I just wanted to take a little moment to highlight a particular press conference that happened with the Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor, formerly the Energy Minister. He was reacting to the rate rise. Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer right now, he had a huge press conference afterwards as well to address that. This was Angus Taylor's snippet of Angus Taylor's one.
This is the kind of unnecessary spending which will fuel interest rates, fuel inflation, and make life harder for all Australians. Happy to take questions. All good? Perfect. Thank you very much. Cheers.
What a difference a few weeks make.
Poor Angus. Poor Angus.
So basically, he's held this press conference. You know, he's made his initial opening statements and has asked around for questions. There's absolutely no journos there. Wow. The difference from being in government to being in opposition. And, I mean, I've been at those press conferences before where I've been the only journo there. Turns out there wasn't even one.
You have to feel for him, don't you? But, like, it's interesting. I keep kind of, like, going, oh, yeah, like, you know, you see PM Anthony Albanese and you're like, what? Oh, no. Whoops. And I saw, like, there was a news show still had Anthony Albanese opposition leader on his super because
yes.
you know, everyone's still getting used to this stuff. So
what do you reckon the cutoff is? What do you reckon like the little grace period is of getting that? Because I do know that in scripts that I write or when we talk and I say Prime Minister Albanese, I'm like, I mean, hang on, wait, hang on.
Wait.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, that is it. Yeah, that is it.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it might take us another couple of months to get that straight. But anyway.
Excellent. Any errors? I've got a couple of months. Good news. Remember, Flash drivers, if you're loving the podcast, let us know. Subscribe and leave 5-star reviews. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Everyone needs to be across the news of the week.
Georgie, moving on, let's go back to the US where the gun law reform debate has been raging weeks on from that horrific school shooting in Texas where 19 children died and 2 teachers were killed as well. I think one of the moments that really stuck out this week was when Matthew McConaughey came out and addressed the media. So he was born in Uvalde, the town where this shooting happened, and he addressed the White House press corps this week to tell stories of the young victims and their families. And he also urged US lawmakers to make the most of what he called this window of opportunity.
I'm here today in the hopes of applying what energy, reason, and passion that I have into trying to turn this moment into a reality. Because as I said, this moment is different. We are in a window of opportunity right now that we have not been in before. A window where it seems like real change can happen.
Georgie, do you think he's right? Do you think that, you know, the US will finally pull its finger out and do something about this problem?
No. I'm such a cynic when it comes to this because I've always had the thought that if nothing was going to change after Sandy Hook, then surely nothing changes ever. I know there's been this growing sense of optimism from a few really public faces, high-profile people like Matthew McConaughey, trying to, this is such a bad way to put it, but make the most of this situation and not have these 19 children and 2 teachers' deaths be in vain. But I just do not have faith in America finding bipartisan support on anything. And even at the moment where I know that what they're talking about to us seems like such minor, like reform details, like strengthening background checks, strengthening, you know, the storage of guns, making it harder for people who have known mental illnesses to have access to firearms, let alone the potential of banning assault weapons. I just don't have any faith that they will. I mean, J-Lo, you lived there. What was it like there for you? Because you've seen this.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about America is this idea of American exceptionalism. So this idea that, you know, America is different to the rest of the world and that, you know, so many of the problems that tear America apart, guns, universal health care, things like that, you know, even social security, the rest of the world has solved. You know, that they're not really problems in other parts of the world because of the way that, you know, a lot of the time to solve these problems, you either need to pay a bit more tax or give up a bit of your freedom. And they're 2 things that are just beyond the pale in America, you know. So with the guns, the reason that it tears them apart is like if you take away a little bit of my rights, that they just will not accept it. Where in Australia, after Port Arthur, I think Australians accepted that in order for everyone to be safe, I'm going to allow you to erode a little bit of my rights. And that's the right calculation.
Why do you think it is, Jayla? Why are they so is it they think it's a slippery slope and then it's like, 1, 2, skip a few, my entire freedom is gone?
I mean, that's the argument. That's the slippery slope argument that they will use in situations like this. But I think that I think in Australia we pride fairness above anything else. A fair go, everyone having a fair go. In America, they pride individual freedom above anything else. That runs in their blood. So if the government comes along and tries to even erode just a little bit of that, they see it as a big attack. So I think that's the psychology behind it. And if you try to go at them, say there's someone who believes in their rights to own a gun privately, not a gun nut, just someone who might be a hunter or just someone who believes politically in that. If you come at them with the Australian example of how we would have mass shootings like every other country until we took away the guns and now we don't really have them anymore, they will just say, but that's Australia. It was sort of like, but that's logical.
Yeah,
but
they could be you.
Right? They just won't accept it. So I agree with you. I think that this is something that is very, very hard for them to unpick. And even someone like Joe Biden really is largely impotent to try and fix this. There's not a lot he can do.
Which is crazy, right? We've been taught that, the American president is the most powerful man in the world and yet cannot stop, 19 innocent children and 2 teachers being just brutally murdered. And it's one of those things where I think that the interesting thing for me about Matthew McConaughey's speech and what other people have echoed too, and even Joe Biden last week when he was talking about, the need for change in this area and gun law reform, was that, none of them are saying, we are here to take your guns like they did in Australia. They're there to try and really nail down that minutiae or the nuance in saying that it's about reliable gun ownership and all of this, which usually is the NRA's big ad campaign, right? They're just like, we are reliable, law-abiding citizens. You can't take our guns, da-da-da-da. So I think that's kind of interesting, like using their own terminology and putting it back to them. I just have absolutely no faith that it will do anything.
Me neither. And to get back to what sparked this, that horror school shooting. I think there was a really interesting report today from a CNN reporter who's recounting what some of the students saw.
They were watching Lilo and Stitch because it was the end of the school year. They'd finished their lessons. And she said one of her teachers got an email that there was a shooter in the building and went to the door and he was right there. And they made eye contact.
The shooter made eye contact with the
teacher. And then he shot out the window in the door. And then Mia says it just happened all so fast. He backed the teacher into the classroom. And he made eye contact with the teacher again, looked her right in the eye and said, good night, and then shot her and killed her.
That student, Mia Cerrillo, has now appeared via video in a congressional committee overnight. And she had a really harrowing story. Here's what she said.
When I went to the backpacks, he shot my friend that was next to me. And I thought he was going to come back to the room. So I grabbed the blood and put it all over me. And
what did you do then when you put the blood on yourself?
Just stay quiet. And then I grabbed my teacher's phone and called 911.
And this kind of goes back to what you were saying, Georgie. This is an 11-year-old girl, a 4th grader. And it's kind of like, if a story like hers isn't enough to inspire action in the States, will anything do it?
This is the thing. I mean, that story from Mia, I've just got goosebumps because She's reflecting on playing dead, an 11-year-old playing dead by smearing her dying friend's blood over herself to be like, just in case he comes back, I don't want to die. I mean, it's the stuff of actual, like, literally a young adult fantasy book that I have read before in, like, some fantasy world where there's bow and arrows and the heroine has to, like, you know, pretend that she's been shot to survive a wartime situation. And yet this is being played out. I mean, I think it is honestly one of the biggest contradictions for America in that they seem to care so much more about children's lives when they're dead. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's the thing that McConaughey kept saying, so many people kept saying, is like, these children's lives matter. They have to matter. They need to have, something has to change. And so therefore let's use this tragedy and turn it into something good. But there's absolutely no, you know, historical reference for that in terms of this debate in America showing that that could be possible.
Mm. Well, hopefully they keep pushing. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on it, see if anything changes.
Do you love hearing J-Law and I chew the news fat and analyse the biggest and smallest headlines each week? Well, make sure you follow us on the socials so you don't miss out on any content. We're on Instagram, Twitter. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you like this podcast. Leave us a review. Get on it. J-Law! We're switching gears a little bit here. I'm rather excited. Do you know why?
Why?
We have a new segment.
Ooh.
Yeah. We've got a new segment. We've hit the big time here at Flash Drive. Flash Drivers, let me introduce you to Breaking Musings. I'll just let that sink in. Breaking Musings. The stories you may have missed and you need to know. Basically, each week, I'm bringing a story, J-Law's bringing a story, and these stories have resonated with us, and they're probably going to resonate with you. So, J-Law, firstly, how much do you love the name Breaking Musings?
You're so pleased with yourself.
I'm so pleased with myself. Flash Drivers, full disclosure, I may have come up with the name Breaking Musings. And I I will die on.
She's got this to be cocky about, plus Queensland winning game 1 of the Origin last night. So
I'm unbearable. I'm unbearable.
The smugness is real. So yes, no, but we love a pun.
We love a pun. We love a pun. Would you like to go first? What is your breaking musing of the week?
Yeah, well, the thing that really got me this week that I think is a good talking point was Apple's new, it unveiled its new plans for the iPhone this week.
Yes.
And the one that got me was the plan to be able to edit or delete or change your messages after you've sent them, which you've never been able to do before. I think there was like a window, like you could do it within a certain amount of time. But to fix your messages once you've sent them. What do you reckon?
I think it's like 10 seconds or so. So you still have to be pretty cluey, right? Like you still have to be cluey enough to be like
10 seconds,
shit, I didn't. It's like still quite quick. So it's like, oh shit, didn't mean to send that. Da, 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 da. Like you got to be quick and on it, right? Which I'm not sure is, you know, the best. I don't think people who would really need this would be, shall we say, sober enough to be able to have that nuance there and figure out the best way to use this. But I mean, we've all had that moment, right? To varying degrees of horror, where you've sent a message that you didn't mean to send, or you've sent a message talking about someone to that person. Oh. And I remember once, I can't even remember what it was about. It was probably like when I was in high school. It was like a high school thing where, you know, you've got your group, you've got your clique, and I was probably like, I didn't want to go. Like I didn't want to go to something, and I was preferring to hang out like with someone else. And I would have been like, oh, thank God. Like I figured that out. Not going there. I've made up something. And then like I remember sending it as like to the group, and I'm just like, and I remember throwing my phone, like actually like trying to get rid of it and just being like, oh God. I mean, now when you're mature and you have the wisdom, you just say, hey guys, not really into that, don't want to go. And they'd be like, cool. Sure. Yeah. But at that time, you know, I could have really used this edit and unsend function. Also though, I think for me in a professional sense, like with autocorrect and stuff, I think this is going to be great because I know that when I was a guest producer working in breakfast TV, I would constantly, you know, be like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. I'd be like typing out messages, making sure that the guests that we'd lined up, it's all good, talking to politicians, their media managers. And the amount of times I've said, looking forward to your love cross instead of live cross is just next level. Absolutely next level. Like, it's just one of those, oh, my God. I just look back and I'm like, oh, God. You're like, sorry, live. I meant live cross.
A friend of mine tells a story about how, so he's from Sweden and he worked at a newspaper where one of their famous filmmakers got nominated for an Oscar. It was his job to text him. Like, they thought he'd probably get nominated. His job to text him when it was time to do an interview once the nominations came out. His movie was called The Square. And he goes, oh, congratulations on the win. Could we have a chat about, he wanted to write The Square, but instead he wrote The SquarePants.
The SpongeBob?
So he must have been texting about SpongeBob a fair bit. The director did not reply.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. That I mean, the key for this though is as well that I think that this function is only available from Apple to Apple, right? So, I mean, is that more reason just to unfriend your Android users? Like, just get rid of them. Like,
who needs them? Who needs them?
Just absolute chaos. I just love that Apple's like, nah, I've woken up and we've chosen chaos today because I just think it just opens up so many possibilities for absolute riotous behaviour, potentially.
So that was my breaking musing. What's yours, Georgie?
So I want you to have a think, J-Law, about something. It can be totally random, but something that you are better at than anyone else. Like it could be like the smallest thing. Like, I don't know, you turn on the light switch better than anyone. Like just have a ponder. I mean, that'd be a super boring one for you to choose. But if it is that, have a ponder about something you do better than anyone else. Because now I know that our listeners may be across this story, but I'm bringing it back into the attention because there is no one on earth that is better at playing on a clay tennis court than Rafael Nadal. He won his 14th French Open crown this week. 14th, which means that he's extended his record as the greatest of all time men's tennis player, to 22 Grand Slam titles, 2 ahead of Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer. And he did it all while playing with a numb foot. He had to have painkillers injected into his foot so that he couldn't, like numbing painkillers, so he couldn't even feel it when he was running around there in the final. And I just think it is absolutely insane. He's 36 years old. I think it was 17 years to the day that since he won his first French Open as a 19-year-old and to win his 14th.
Incredible.
Like, at that tournament, I reckon there's been something like 115 games for him total, 115 matches for him total, and he's lost 3. So that's 112 to 3 as a win-loss record at Roland Garros. Like, that is mental. And I feel it is very apt to be brought back for breaking musings because I don't know if I'm that good at anything, which is a shame. Have you thought of something that you're better at than no one else?
I know where the apostrophes go. That's something.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
Pretty nerdy.
Yeah, but you know what? I reckon that is an underutilized skill by the majority of the population.
People don't
know
where
that's
they go.
good.
People don't know where they go.
They do not know where they go. They have no idea, and it's always very confusing. Especially as a news presenter, like it is really hard. And like I write my own script, so I have no one except myself to blame when I've put the wrong grammar in, and I'm always like, what? Whose shoe? The shoe? Whose shoe? What shoe? What's happening? And I'm always like, damn it me. So I need some of that superpower. I need some of that.
But you know, you're reading scripts. You can't hear an apostrophe though, so you're all right.
True. You're right. J-Law, quick check-in. How do you think our first edition of Breaking Musings went?
Look, I think it's going to become an institution.
I think so. I don't think there's any other option. I think 11 out of 10. We'll do again.
It's happening. Send in your breaking musings too.
Please do. That would be so exciting.
Hit us up on the socials if you want.
Yeah. Flash drivers, what story have we missed? Let us know, and we'll bring it to Breaking Musings next week as well. It can be J-Law's Breaking Musing, my Breaking Musing, and then yours.
That's a good idea.
J-Law, it is that time. Quick shout out to the platform Flash, for which we both work. What should we be watching? What can be we blah, blah, blah. I'll get my words right. What can we be consuming this week on Flash?
Yeah, so we've just dropped a whole bunch of new true crime content onto the platform this week. So, everybody loves a true crime podcast and things like that. So we've sort of got a bunch of really good content. The show Crime Scene Investigations Australia and a bunch of other really good crime documentaries, a lot of Australian content, including some really interesting docos on cases such as the Ivan Milat murders, the Anita Cobby matter, and also a new Sky News documentary called Shandy's Story, a really quite harrowing story about a woman who was brutally murdered in Mackay and the sort of new information that's coming up about that case. So if you're into true crime, there's a lot of good stuff to get lost in.
And it is, I don't know if it's a question now of if you're into true crime. I feel like just every single person, right? Like it is the one genre that has totally captured the world. Like anyone, like you'd be walking past a complete stranger and odds are that they totally are into true crime, or at least have some idea of a true crime podcast or a doco that they really love. So I think this is really exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. So check it out on Flash.
Check it out on Flash. And Flash drivers, never fear. My beautiful voice, J-Law's beautiful tones, the rap duo you didn't know that you needed, but we gifted you. We'll be back. We'll be back next week. Flash Drive coming at you. Remember, it is all about the news you need, how you want, when you want here at Flash. J-Law, chat soon.
Catch you later.
If you enjoy the news and this podcast and want to learn more about Flash, you can sign up at flashnews.com.au. Flash lets you stream more than 25 news channels in the one place. New customers get 14 days free. Start streaming your news today.